In today's video, we're going to be working on a 2000 Tundra SR5. The customer brought it to me for a brake job, but on the way here, he kept having to drive with 2 feet to get it to keep it running. If you rev it up and then drop the idle, you just rev up and drop the pedal, it dies. If you ease it back down, it'll try to stay running. But even once it's warm, it's almost run around 280, 320 RPMs, and that's not enough for it to keep running. Definitely not while it's in gear. Once it's cold, it's not that bad. When you first start it, the idle's a little higher and it's manageable and you can actually try to drive it, but within about 2 or 3 minutes it starts dying. So my suspicion is it's going to be the throttle body, because I noticed that the ductwork, first thing I noticed is the clamps weren't tight on the ductwork and the air filter was completely filthy. So we're going to look at that. I'm going to put my scanner on it and just watch live data just to see if I see anything wrong. Oftentimes, if it's a dirty throttle body, it's not going to throw up an engine code of any kind. So I already checked the engine codes when he first brought it over to me and they didn't have any. The engine light's not on, but I'm still going to read the live data just to make sure. But my suspicion is the throttle body, and that's what we're going to dive into. So let's get into it. You can keep it idling with your foot, but you have to put your foot a little bit down to get it to start, and then gradually lower the idle. You can't let it drop or it'll die. Now my foot's off of it. But as it heats up, the idle will drop. I didn't want to sit here and hold the video camera for 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, make you all sit there and watch, but as you see, the idle's gotten lower. I'll put it in gear. That's running about 350, 400 RPM. And if I try to give it any gas, now if I can go easy on the throttle, it seems to do okay. Well, it almost tried to die there. When it gets to full operating temperature, which right now it's still sitting on cold, it won't run at all. You have to use 2 feet to drive it. This one doesn't have an air idle control valve like a lot of the Toyotas do, where it goes up underneath the throttle body. This one has that whole unit that runs from there all the way over there. You can buy what they call an air idle control or fuel injected air control motor, which bolts in there somewhere. I haven't figured out, I think it bolts somewhere down below on the bottom there, but that thing is just about shy of $100 of what this whole thing costs. So if you went out and bought the motor and it still doesn't fix it, then you could buy this, just this what they call a throttle positioning sensor, which isn't actually accurate. Throttle positioning sensor is buried up underneath here, and I tried playing with it just to see if I could bump the idle up just a bit to see if it'd get over its hang up. But as it got warm, it still did the same thing. Once it gets to completely hot operating temperature, it won't stay idling. I'm going to take this off and clean it, because I did pull this tube off, and I'll show you here in a minute. Pull the tube off and it's completely filthy in there. For some reason, somebody left these clamps loose, the ones on each end, so it's probably been sucking in dirt around the breather, so that doesn't help it either. You can see how dirty it is running through here. You can hear the little motor that pulls the butterfly. I've already taken the throttle cable off. All that requires is just throttle back. Just snap this little retaining thing to the wire. I can't take the wire loose from this because it's banging in this bracket, so the bracket will have to come off, this hose will have to come off. All these other connectors have to come off, and then there's 4 bolts well, 2 nuts and 2 bolts. One nut on here, one nut there, and there and there. And then that'll let this thing come off. And then I'm going to clean it and try it again. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to replace the entire unit. So there's enough components on this thing that if you just start trying different pieces to figure out what it is, you'll end up having way more than just buying an old new unit. So. Okay, I took this nut and this nut off, and that bolt and that bolt right there. 2 bolts, 2 nuts. I removed this hose, took this hose loose here. This one doesn't have to come off, but it was just kind of in the way to make it easier to get to the clamp to this bigger hose. Like I said, I've disconnected the throttle, disconnected the connectors, took the wire loom out of these little clips here so that it's not connected to the throttle body. There's a hose right here. I can't get a hold of it too good. I don't want to break it, so I want to see if I can get it off once I get the throttle body loose. I removed the brackets and stuff on top to make everything easier accessible by hand, because you don't want to break these hoses if you can avoid it. Okay, what I did is I pulled the throttle body out just a little bit. Well, I pulled it about as far as it's going to go while that hose is still attached to it there. And that gave me enough room to get some 45-degree angle pliers on it and wiggle it until I got it loose without hurting the hose. You saw the front side is dirty, but now let's look at the back side. Pretty filthy. This is all I use is some carburetor cleaner and a brass bristle brush. Okay, I cleaned it. I didn't really see the point in me showing it. All I did was just spray some I didn't have any throttle body cleaner. Of course, I didn't spray it down any holes. All I wanted to do is clean this Venturi. So what I did is I just sprayed carburetor cleaner on it. It was so thick on the back side that I had to use a brass bristle brush. You don't want to use sandpaper or anything like that. I just used a brass bristle brush and a rag and wiped all the goo out. I just kept working until I got all the goo up on top and bottom. But both sides look like this now and super clean, and that's all you got to do. Just, I mean, you may not have one that's this bad. And again, your problem may not be that it's this dirty, but because like I said, this hose, this ductwork from here and there, the clamps are just loose. So I mean, it could have been sucking in water, moisture, dirt, air, who knows around that. I don't know why somebody left the clamps loose, but so if your engine's not wanting to idle or die and everything else, you think everything is okay, first thing I would check when it's doing that, just see how dirty it is right in here. You can always push that up, you can get in there and look. I don't know if you can see it, bad lighting, but you can see it's clean all the way to the back side now. It just cleaned it up real good. You could possibly clean it on the car, but I would not recommend it because it's going to wash everything down inside the plenum. So I wouldn't do that. I would just take it off. It's 4 bolts, some connectors, clean it, put it back on, and I should have bought a new throttle body gasket, but it's an O-ring and it seemed to seal up just fine. So I would highly recommend doing that though. Okay, now that I've cleaned it, you can rev it up real high and it won't drop down to die. It's been running for about 10 or 15 minutes, so it's all the way to the operating temperature you can see. Before it'd rev up to 2 or 3 grand and come back and die, what you saw earlier. When it first started, it went to about 1100 RPM because it was cold, and as it got warmer, the idle dropped. That's the way it's supposed to. Put it in gear, make sure it doesn't. And goose it a little bit. no longer die. That's what we were looking for. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and always check back with me because I'm always working on something crazy. See you in the next one.